Hello and welcome to the Will Leitch Show. I am the aforementioned Will Leitch, and I thank you for spending part of your day with me. Today's show is about Twitter. Now, I live two lives. In one life, I'm a journalist and a media personality. I write stories, a lot of them, and I interview people, and I go on television, and I talk, and when I'm finished with everything, I log on to social media to tell everybody all of the things that I did. If you know me at all, this is probably how. I'm a media construct. I make things and then I position myself in the sphere of ideas in a way that hopefully persuades you to consume the things I made. That is my public life. In the other life, I'm just a regular human walking around the world on his own. I kiss my wife good morning, I make breakfast for my kids, I walk them to school, I grab lunch, I pay bills, I mow the lawn, I coach Little League baseball, I call my parents, I stay up too late drinking bourbon and watching old movies. That is my private life. That I even make such a distinction feels increasingly old-fashioned, but I do make that distinction. As I get older, I find that I measure my success in my public life by how little it intrudes on my private life. I know I've done something wrong when Twitter invades the real world. Maybe I've written something incorrect I have to interrupt dinner to fix. Maybe I've forgotten to file a story that I have to ignore my kids to finish. Or, most often, maybe the world of social media is taking over the world of real life entirely. A few months ago, I had a trip planned to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta with my kids that unfortunately happened to be the same day I wrote a story about Barstool Sports, and it was published. I had to spend all day getting screamed at by cretins rather than spend it with my two sons who, someday soon, will be grown up enough that they won't want to hang out with their dad at all anymore. That was a bad day. I have such respect for the journalists who can sit and just take the abuse all day. People who get a lot worse than this middle-aged straight white guy gets it, and still go back to their normal lives when it's over. I could stay and fight all day, but man, who needs such headaches? Life's too short, right? Today's guest, Jemele Hill, once woke up to the President of the United States, the ultimate Barstool troll, telling the entire planet that she should be fired. That she got up that day and continued to go about her life undaunted is honestly sort of heroic. I would have hid under the bed, or I would have thrown my phone into the ocean and moved to a remote village in Siberia. I still have not figured out how to balance public life and private life in the year 2019. I used to want to write and report and talk and work constantly just to make as much shit as I can for as many people as want to consume it. But now it follows me and all of us everywhere. I want to work, and then when I am done, I want to go home. I am no longer certain that that is even possible. Okay, before we get into today's guest, check it out, Remote Peace. Yes, in season 2, I no longer have to sleep in the studio. They let me out occasionally for fresh air, social interactions, and opiates. It is baseball season. It is, in fact, opening day this week. And with opening day, of course, comes the renewal of hope, the obviously deluded belief that even though last year was terrible, this year, it's all going to be okay. And there is no fan base more infested with obviously deluded beliefs and the desperate need to think that it's all going to be okay than that of the New York Mets. A few weeks ago, I went to the Mets annual Queens Baseball Convention, where Mets fans gather in the winter to share stories of misery and woe. I wanted to try to understand why these poor people would possibly do this to themselves. Hello, we are here in Astoria, Queens, at the Queens Baseball Convention. It is so cold, I cannot feel my chest. Fortunately, the one way to possibly warm one's soul is to come out here to talk about the Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets.
Who is your favorite baseball team?
The Mets. The Mets.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Ball, knocking those home runs over the wall.
So you were officially Mets Fan of the Year in 2016. Is it sad being a Mets fan?
No, it takes a lot of loyalty and confidence to be a Met fan.
Love the Mets basically since I was born. My dad was a Mets fan. They rushed home from the hospital the day I was born because the Mets were on TV and I was born on time. Yeah, no, my mom tells me about it all the time. Your dad was so concerned about getting home in time to watch the Mets the night of your birth.
Did he scream at her to push faster?
Well, him and the gynecologist were both Mets fans, so my mom said all they were talking about the whole time were the Mets.
Okay, so there's a dude over here wearing a Tebow jersey. What do you think of that?
I love Tim Tebow. I don't ever want to see him in a Met jersey.
This is a table just for Mets trivia questions, right? Yeah. Okay, now I'm a Cardinals fan. So if we talk specifically about Game 7 of the 2006 National League Championship Series, I'm going to do great. I'm assuming that's all you're going to want to talk about.
That's the last thing I want to talk about.
If you make it to the age of 94 and the Mets have never won a World Series and you are on your deathbed, will you feel like the time watching the Mets was well spent?
I would say so. I mean, there's 118 years worth of Cubs fans who didn't get to see the Cubs win the World Series. So, I mean...
And they died miserable and unhappy. Are you playing for the Mets next year or 2 years? Because you were just drafted by the Mets, right?
No.
Everybody here seems unusually happy for Mets fans. And I figured I would come here and everyone would just be silently drinking. You knew what you were doing when you made your son a Mets fan, right?
I did.
Are you mad that he did that to you?
Absolutely not. I love being a Mets fan. It's part of my identity, you know? Everybody asks me who I like for baseball. I say the Mets, and I always get a comment, you know?
Let's say the Mets get a sponsor. Like, you know, the NBA teams are doing this now. They get a sponsor, and on their jersey, it says, "We don't like Ann. We don't like her." If you see Ann, boo in her face and tell her she's a terrible person. Would you still be a Mets fan? Yes! These people are insane! My guest today is a longtime writer and commentator for ESPN who is now a staff writer at The Atlantic. She's awesome, by the way. Read her stuff there. Her new podcast is Jemele Hill is Unbothered. Premieres on Spotify on April 15th. Please welcome Jemele Hill.
Hey,
an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Of course, of course. They finally clapped. They never clapped for anyone. They finally
well,
clapped.
look at that.
Look at that. That's great. We were just talking before we came on. You and I, we have not seen each other in a very long time.
It has been.
In a very long time.
I feel like it was maybe a Deadspin Super Bowl party.
I have a few things I want to talk to you about the Deadspin. We'll get into that in a moment.
Okay.
We have more weighty topics.
You're a serious journalist,
yes,
so I
exactly.
understand this.
Well, because I also saw you at like at a Pointer conference one time.
There you go. That's another one.
Back when I was briefly mistaken for the Scourge as opposed to the mostly irrelevant thing that I am today. I have a million things I want to talk to you about. But I have to say, the thing that I have to tell you, I as with any interviewer knows, you always start with kind of your own experience. And I have lived for a long time with the nightmare because I'm bad at social media. I'm just not good at it. I'm scared of it. And Trump has tweeted about me overnight.
Okay.
And I'm waking up and I got like 30 million lunatics. And then all of a sudden, that would be a whole problem. This actually happened to you.
Yeah.
And first off, I think it's proof just how much stronger you are than I am, because I would still be under the bed. But I just, if you don't mind, can you just what that experience, like, if you don't mind, what that morning was like to just have that suddenly land in your life?
Well, in a way, though, it's lost its specialness because the president tweets so much, and he's attacked so many people on Twitter. It's like, I don't even feel special anymore, right? It's
well,
just,
yeah, but it's still,
you know, I mean,
like,
it's okay, yeah. But
it's true. I guess the megaphone is not as, it's not like,
No,
he does like one tweet a year and he chose you.
Then it would be more special.
But still, I can't even imagine, you know, there is the, like, you're an excellent writer and you're like a personality and you're a commentator, but you're also like a regular person walking around the planet. And we all kind of live a little bit of those lives sometimes. And at that moment, it seems like it would be impossible for those two things to be said.
You know, that particular morning, like my phone, it started like buzzing at a really unruly hour, you know, because he seems to do these overnight or whatever. That's his, you know, he has Twitter hours.
Executive time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's executive time,
yes.
Correct. So at that point, you know, my phone just started like kind of blowing up at about 7:30 in the morning. And I think it was one of my friends who's a news anchor. He was the first one to tell me. And I was like, why am I waking up to like 20-something text messages? Like, this never happens. My DMs are not popping that way, right? So then I, of course, I clicked the link because somebody had sent me a link of, you know, hey, the president tweeted by you. It was a lot of WTFs, you know, in those tweets or texts that I was sent from my friends. And so I went to it, looked at it, very impressed. He spelled my name right.
Yeah, I have to say that's.
He got the Mike part wrong.
Yeah,
But that's okay.
yes,
Yeah, you look.
Yeah,
I can't ask for everything,
He
right?
just, someone should just take that guy named Mike away from you.
Exactly. So I mean, if anything, I was more amused by it just because. I mean, it didn't. I didn't have an instinct to cower or to be afraid. It was just. It was mostly just disbelief. Like, I cannot believe of the thousands of problems that are going on in this country right now, and for all kinds of weighty issues that the president should be dealing with, that he's really that concerned about what some sports anchor has had to say about him. And so, but there is a little bit of fear, not of him or not of the backlash, but then I'm thinking, how is ESPN going to take this?
Because this was at the end, like things have been going, as usual, Trump was always a little bit late on the news, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like this had been going on for a while and probably just happened to be in his TV.
I mean, because it was, for people who may not exactly remember the timeline, it was the tweets and then that created his own issues. And the first person, I believe, to say something from the White House was actually Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Because in the press,
that's right.
You're right. And in the press briefing, she said that she thought it was viral, that I deserved to be fired.
I don't even think she was asked about it. I think she just brought it up.
No, she was asked. She was asked a question about like what she thought about it,
and she just went straight to fire.
She went like fire. I'm like, all right.
Great.
So after that happens and dies down, of course the suspension happens, and so which was unrelated to the Trump team. Right. So I get suspended, and then he's like, okay, let me jump in now and sort of chime in about what I think about her and the ratings of ESPN. Since
I'm sure he had been studying, had been watching the Five for a very long time.
Completely, right? So because we know how well prepared he is before he says things.
Yes.
But no, I mean, it was just a little surreal. I was, again, at that point, I was just concerned what ESPN, how they would take it. Because, as I know it's not a shock to anybody, they wanted this to die down, not go away completely.
And I want to get into that a little bit because it feels like that whether this has died down and whether it's not, I have to say, it seems like they've been somewhat successful in that. Like, they're not getting yelled at by Trump anymore.
No, but then again, I'm not there, so I don't know if those two things are coinciding.
Vital hasn't pissed him off yet.
And then, I mean, it just created another momentum of news. And, I wasn't worried about losing my job, but I just was worried that that was going to force me and ESPN into just another awkward and uncomfortable situation.
Well, and it's funny because we talked about how I said we met each other a long time ago, and you were all. This is before. This is before there was social media, before there was any of this stuff, and you were a star like immediately. And I'm sorry, it's true. You were a star. You were. And what's interesting is we all get into the business. I'm gonna do a little media talk here, but we all get into the business. The idea of like we try to make a name for ourselves and work our way up and get more power and get more exposure and do things. And to see what you've done the last 10 years is A, really impressive. B, I find myself watching it being like, wow, Jemele is doing so awesome. I don't know if I want to do that awesome. Like, and I don't mean that just as a compliment, though I mean that a little bit. But like, there's a level of exposure that I don't know if I want. Right. Like, I want to like hit like a certain point that's below getting yelled at by the president on Twitter.
Correct.
And becoming a Breitbart meme or becoming that. Right. I want to do well, but like. I don't want.
There's limits to it.
There's limits. Do you? Was it too much? Does it ever feel like too much?
Sometimes it is a little overwhelming. And I guess mostly I think about how it influences and impacts the people around me. So just very small example. It used to be when I would go out that it'd be a couple people that might recognize me, and I used to joke to all my friends like, you definitely want to come to the bar with me because bartenders always recognize me, and so do security people. But bartenders, because they're working under televisions all day, so they will see me. They
we saw you setting up today.
Correct.
Seeing at the end of the day.
Correct. So because they always have ESPN on loop. So yeah, it'd be a couple people, but now it's certain spaces where it is just constant picture taking, constant, talking, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about that, but it does change your life.
It's not normal life anymore. Like,
no,
you can't just go to the bar and.
No. I mean, I mean, there's some places I can still go, but even if I, go out socially, it can become a thing. I mean, I remember when I did Complex Con in the summer, and really cool environment, a lot of awesome people. But I wanted to go to the Complex Con floor, but I knew I couldn't really go there unless I wanted to be barraged by like a lot of pictures, a lot of people coming up to me and that sort of thing. So I just, again, I worry about how it impacts other people. Because if you and I go to dinner and I really want to go to, dinner with you or whatever, and I want us to catch up and all that, we're going to be besieged by 5, 6, 7 people who are going to want to come up and take a picture. And that could, that could just put things in an awkward spot. So yeah, the attention is a little different. Much more scrutiny, obviously. I don't really care what people write about me. If anything, I want Breitbart to send me a check because I provided them so much content. And it seems like every time I sneeze, they're like, she sneezed, what a liberal. It's like, dude, relax.
I have to say,
yeah.
I've seen you sneeze. It's a very liberal.
Yes, it's just true. I mean, it's a very, supportive of,
Conservatives are they're sneeze spreaders.
Yeah, exactly. But liberals, we sneeze much differently. Yes. Of course, we sneeze and it's like climate change. Get on it, so.
But to me, that's kind of the difference, though, right? And that's one of the things I was kind of fascinated with your move from ESPN to the Atlantic is not only is it going from ESPN to the Atlantic and all that comes with that, but it seems like I know and we'll talk about the podcast in a moment, but it seems like television back to writing. Is that a calmer place, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, it's always my happy place. Right. It was my first love. One thing you realize when you're at ESPN is that being there, because it's such a mammoth, sports brand, it's sort of like people who watch you have no idea what you did pre-ESPN. Like they think you literally were born at ESPN. And so there were a lot of people that had no idea I had an entire print career, in journalism.
Terrifying. That's literally what has always scared me the most about ESPN.
Yeah.
Is the idea that it's like the Borg.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've confirmed it.
Yes, no, it swallows you up.
Yeah.
And so people have no idea what you did before. They think this is where you started and existed, and that's all they know you as ESPN. So it did feel good to kind of have a breather from that, so to speak, with the Atlantic. And I went there because I did want to return to writing. And I think a lot of people were surprised. Like if it was a Vegas prop bet, I'm guessing that most people would have laid their money down on me having a show on MSNBC. Because that was what I heard and most frequently, like, are you going to MSNBC? Yeah. Are you going to CNN? Are you going why? Just because I made that one tweet didn't mean necessarily that I was going to immediately jump into politics, even though I guess I sort of did by going to the Atlantic. But the whole, the whole point of it is I was never somebody who had to be on TV every day. Television was something that just kind of happened to me. It was never anything that I sought. And so it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't feel difficult at all, or I don't necessarily miss being on television.
I was going to say, are you done with it?
No, I'm not done with it, but I'm now in a position that I can be very strategic. I can pick and choose what I want to be a part of, and I like to, in many ways, do something different. So I've been presented with some options, just waiting for the right thing that I feel like is a really good fit for me to come along. But no, I'm not retired. Okay. But do I miss doing SportsCenter? No. I do not miss doing.
That seems like a really hard job, I have to say.
It's not that it's hard. It's just that, it is hard. Right. So so you're right. So I don't
Jemele Hill, Breitbart, Jemele Hill.
I know, right.
SportsCenter is easy.
It's easy, right? Exactly. That'll be a headline for sure.
I don't think it's all just like mice on hamster wheels over there anymore. Well, that thing is all cobwebs in this.
SportsCenter is a fire drill every day. And it wasn't that part of it, because TV, as I'm sure you know, is just sort of engineered chaos. Yeah. But I think it's a grind. It's a real grind to do television every day. It's different from writing. Different from writing. With writing, you can pick and choose your spots, right? Like, I need to be on to write this 1,000 words or 2,000 words. I need to be on for this. And then then I'm done, right? But TV, every single day, if you don't bring a certain level of energy, people know, or you're not as good good, or you don't, it's just a different kind of grind. And so there's so many moving parts, to SportsCenter. I certainly learned a lot doing it, but it was easily the worst role that I had at ESPN.
So now you're doing the podcast, and now you have a podcast. Now, is this I have a podcast, but I just talk about things that really don't matter and nobody listens to it. You have one that you alternately have one that people will listen to and will actually be about things. So this is going to be a weekly podcast.
Yes, it'll be twice a week. Twice a week podcast, and we're going to cover the news of the day and talk about my new obsession with Game of Thrones and all this. Yeah, because I'm the person that's just now getting into Game of Thrones.
I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but it's almost over.
Yeah, I did hear that. I did hear this was the last season.
So I love this show. It's
like, why is it going away? Like, what's happening? No.
Thanks a lot, Jemele. We all enjoy it.
No, I'm very good at being on the Late Show with TV. I almost kind of prefer it that way because then I can blaze through all the seasons. But it's a bit like being very late to a conversation when you're like, hey, what are you guys talking about now? Let's talk about Game of Thrones.
So how far into it are you?
I'm in season 5.
Okay, so I'm curious, the things that happened early on, you had them spoiled for you before?
No, because here's the thing. Game of Thrones fans were kind of annoying, all right? And now I've become
That's very kind of you to say kind of.
Yes, they were annoying. And so on Sunday nights when it came on, I knew to shut off Twitter because I didn't really care about what was happening on Game of Thrones, and it was dominating social media, and I was like, I don't care. So I avoided all of it. So I had no idea. I just knew people died, and you shouldn't be attached to them.
And there was some sort of dragon.
Yes, that's what I knew. I was like, a dragon, and I kept hearing Red Wedding, and I was like, what the? I don't even know what that means, right?
And so now you're all.
And so then when I watched the Red Wedding episode the other day, it's because I live in LA now, so for East Coast time, it's like 3 a.m, and I just immediately tweeted, why didn't you guys tell me all my favorite people are about to die in one episode? Like, this is crazy.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm going through this glass case of emotion where I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'm just sitting there with my mouth open for 10 minutes like, that didn't just happen, did it?
Well,
so then I was like,
good.
oh, now I get why people
now people like that.
I was like, now I get it.
That's why I muted so many people about 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you have a bi-weekly podcast about Game of Thrones.
We will discuss issues, and we'll, as you know, podcasts are meant to be intimate experiences.
Right.
So people learn a lot about you. I've got 2 amazing co-hosts, Michael Arsenault and Cole Wiley, and we just plan to build a great community, a hang that people can come and feel like that they may be learning a few things, but also feel like they're really getting to know us. And of course, we have some nice newsmaker guests that we have coming up. So
I think there's a presidential election coming up. It's going to be a whole.
Yeah, it might be. So Trump, you will not see on the podcast. I hate to disappoint everybody.
I have to say, I'm going to listen to every single one of those shows. But if he's on, I am going to skip that one. I'm done. I'm filled to the
thanks,
brim.
Will. Appreciate that.
I'm not listening to the rest. So I'm going to skip that.
You're going to skip that.
I'm out of that one. Okay. I mean, it seems like it'd be very entertaining. I'm to the brim. I'm to the brim of that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a section we call frivolous questions of dubious import.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh my.
I know it's questions.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Here we go. Upside down. There we go.
Okay, very important.
Okay. So I touched on this earlier, but your 2018, honestly, I was on your Instagram and they all do the 9 to the 18.
Oh yeah.
And I was like,
your top 9.
Jesus Christ. Jemele had you ran the gamut of human experiences in 2018.
Yeah.
Are you gonna relax? Can you relax a little bit in 2019?
Relax. That's funny. That's really funny.
Okay, well you can't have that many things.
I have 172 jobs. I can't relax. All right.
All right, fine.
Okay.
Well, don't get engaged again.
Okay, I will.
If you don't mind me asking, I know everyone that gets engaged loves this question. Do you have your wedding schedule? Is that happening in 2019?
Yes, it is.
It happening in 2019?
Yes, it is.
Well, then never mind. Then it's going to be so much great.
Yeah, so this, I'm hoping that will make the top 9.
Yeah,
hopefully that will.
I don't know. We'll see how good the lighting is.
Yeah,
in the Instagram photo.
Exactly. But it was a really crazy year when I think about it. So I moved to a new city. Actually, I lived in 3 cities last year. I started the year living in Hartford, Connecticut, moved to DC, and then moved to LA.
We'll just sit tight for
I will know I'll be living in the same place all year.
Okay, go there.
Okay, so there's that.
Okay, so I have a few questions generally about sports ethics. This is something I struggle with a lot.
Oh, okay.
I struggle with a lot on this.
Okay.
And because I love sports, it's a sports show, but sometimes it can be hard, and there are people that you cheer for that are terrible, or or frankly just the whole capitalist structure of sports can be a little ugly sometimes. I'm curious, someone that you're a Michigan State person.
Mm-hmm.
Was that difficult for you when all of that was going on to like separate? Because on one hand, like I think of things that I cheer for, like. If something happened at University of Illinois, where I went to school, and like it's physically hard, like but bad things will happen. I'll look at the logo, and I think I don't even want to look at this logo right now. Was it hard during that time to separate your kind of inherent love for Michigan State, but also kind of everything that was going on?
No, it wasn't hard because. Look, I mean, I was just as vocal in my displeasure with Michigan State's leadership as anybody. I think the hard part was more some of the things that I think I said and some of the things I certainly wrote, I think it definitely cost me some relationships there, for sure. But I was okay with that. And I understand that they feel very protective about the university. But at the same time, wrong is wrong. And how that situation was handled was sickening. And the fact that that was allowed to go on is still mind-boggling. And what made it even worse is that some people that I considered to be good people were close to the situation, and I was truly stunned at their lack of inaction. Like, me and the gymnastics coach, who I believe was charged with obstruction of justice, Kathy Klages. I've known Kathy for years, and to see her role in that, I was just disappointment doesn't even begin.
Did you get to talk to her? Did you get to talk to her after?
No, I haven't talked to her at all. But even with Tom Izzo, who I've known forever. He was not related at all to the Larry Nassar.
But some of the
situation.
comments,
But of course, ESPN did an investigation looking at how him and also Mark D'Antonio handled the sexual assault accusations against some of their players. And I thought it was a lot of questions that he needed to frankly answer as the face of the university. And I know there were people in his camp that were very unhappy with me and felt as if I turned my back on them.
Like you were supposed to be like, Michigan State's fine.
I mean, honestly, I think they would have preferred just me either not talk about it, or if I did, to be more supportive, if you will. And so, look, it is what it is. But I did tell Stu, it was ironic because I was on campus shortly after Larry Nassar was sentenced. And what did give me, what I did feel very good about is the student body, faculty, administration. They were outraged by what happened and very supportive of all of the survivors. This was not a Penn State situation where when it was that going on, I thought, there was some really ugly behavior by Penn State students. And for that.
Continuing.
Yeah, correct. And even with, their sort of blind support of Joe Paterno, but I never got that sense there. And I told them, because I was giving a talk there that particular week, that there was a monster here. He's paying for his crimes. He can never pay enough. Support the survivors, continue that. But I'm not embarrassed that I went to Michigan State University, and you shouldn't be embarrassed either. Larry Nassar, we cannot give him that much importance to take that away from what an institution that has, frankly, given us so much. So.
Okay, my final question, I ask this of all my guests, and I feel like you are uniquely qualified to answer this question. I look around the world and it seems terrifying.
That's the word.
I'm asking you, do you think we're going to be okay? Do you think we're going to?
Well, you can look at it in terms of history. We did survive 400 years of slavery, right? So I didn't say we came out of it okay,
right,
but we did come out of it,
okay,
okay.
Those are two separate questions.
Yes.
Are we going to be okay, and are we going to make it?
Yeah.
That's
So
okay.
it's.
Are we going to be? First of all, are we going to make it?
We're going to make it.
Okay.
Right. Because. There's a lot of resiliency. I think the one silver lining about all this nonsense that has happened is that I do feel people are very activated. Their sense of urgency has definitely changed. You can look at the world of sports. I mean, probably early on in my career, and certainly I'd say 10 years ago, I don't think athletes were nearly this vocal. But now they're extremely vocal.
You're almost expected to.
Yeah, correct. So it's completely gone in reverse and done a 180. And I think the same thing is happening when you look at the new lawmakers that were welcomed into Congress. It looks a lot different because people are like, hey, okay, if we're going to put a stop to this, this is how we have to change it. So people feel very empowered. So yes, we will make it. Now, will we be okay? Now, that is a different question.
It's a different
because I don't know, just honestly, structurally, how this country is sort of built and some of the problems that we have. I don't know if okay is realistic. We will survive, but okay implies like some sense of we will be okay in pockets. How about that? All right, we'll be okay in pockets.
There was enough intellectual rigor to that answer that while it was made me feel sad, it made me feel enriched, nevertheless.
There you go.
We're doomed. Jemele Hill, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on the
It was a
podcast.
pleasure.
Jemele Hill is Unbothered. Spotify, April 15th. I will listen to every show as long as you do not have Donald Trump on.
Well, that's enough reason for me not to have it.
Exactly. If he calls it like, well, Will said he wouldn't listen to that one, so I can't. Thank you, Jemele, by all means. This has been the Will Leitch Show. Find us on SI TV and Amazon channels and wherever your Will Leitches are bought, sold, and packaged. Have a good day. Bye.